Hello and welcome back to the Argyle CFO Leadership Forum, Future of Finance. My name is Michael with Argyle. A couple of notes before I turn things over to our speakers. First, a quick reminder to stop by our sponsors' virtual booths at any time during today's event and for the following week. Our partners are committed to providing you with valuable content and a great overall experience. At any time during today's event, you can visit their virtual booths from the main agenda page. To ask questions throughout the session, simply type into the Q&A chat and we will address your questions at the end of the session. And now, without further delay, I would like to introduce our speakers, John Schwab, Chief Financial Officer with Vertex, and Mark Duclos, Senior Director, Global Strategic Partnerships, also with Vertex. We're excited to have Mark and John with us today for a fireside chat. Mark and John, over to you.
Hey, John, thanks for joining us today at the Argyle CFO Leadership Forum, the Future of Finance. I was wondering if you could just take a quick minute and maybe tell us a little about yourself and your role at Vertex.
Terrific. It's great to be here, Mark. Thanks very much for having me. Yeah, absolutely. Again, my name is John Schwab. I'm the Chief Financial Officer over at Vertex. I've been here for about 3 years. So I joined just prior to us going public. So I prepared I did a lot of the pre-IPO activity. We took the company public during the pandemic, which was very interesting. And then, I've managed the company since the time of since going public. So it's been quite a ride. It's been very interesting, operating in the SaaS space and the software space, especially as we kind of wrap up 2022 and head into 2023. But it's been an interesting ride. Prior to Vertex, I spent over 20 years as CFO of a handful of different companies in the financial services and fintech space. And then prior to that, I go back to my roots and I'm an accountant by trade. So I worked 11 years in one of the big 4 accounting firms. So that's a little bit on me. And, so I'm happy to be here and look forward to the questioning. Thanks, Mark.
Yeah, thanks, John, for taking the time on that. So let's jump right in if we can. So 2023 is upon us, and there continues to be a lot of question about the economy and what this year is going to look like. We probably can't nail you down about your views for 2023 because I don't think any of us have a crystal ball. But what are some things that your company, Vertex, is doing to focus on growth and profitability?
Yeah, it's a great question and very interesting timing, I think. Mark, if we were having this conversation a year or 18 months ago, you would be asking me about what the growth initiatives that we're going to be focused on. And I think that is the market was focused on go, grow as fast as humanly possible, to the disregard of some of the profitability metrics that are out there. And I think what we've seen over the last, again, 12 to maybe 18 months is a much bigger focus around profitability and really ensuring that the growth is not done at all costs, but it's done with a mind towards profit. And that's been a bit of a change. And I think it's interesting how the evolution has occurred. Now for Vertex, we're a 40-year company, been around a long time. And so that evolution, we've been growing and been profitable for virtually all those periods. So I think we feel very comfortable in the position that we're in. But I think for many, that's been a change, and the focus to profitability, especially for some of the earlier stage companies, has really come into perspective very, very quickly. And there's been a lot of changes. Question, because I think it's evolved very quickly.
No, that's actually some great perspective on the market approach and growth versus profitability. Mm-hmm. Maybe you could also take a few minutes to share some of your thoughts on what other companies like Vertex or within certain industries and what they're focusing on currently, and maybe bullet point out what some of the best practices maybe are to look at as well.
Sure. And it's a great question, Mark, given the timing and where we sit right now, early 2023. We're focused on a lot of activities right now. In the background, there's a kind of this din of this global economic uncertainty that's out there. We've seen a number of companies laying companies off and making some changes to address some of those profitability things. And I think, right now, whether you're focused on growth or whether you're focused on profitability, the key to being able to really react is very, very important. Being able to be very quick to action based on issues and based on things that are coming across in some of the financial data and some of the reports, and then being able to respond in a very agile manner, reorganize the forces and move everybody to kind of focus on the issue that needs to be adapted. And again, the only way that you're going to really get there is through prioritization, really focusing on those things. So again, I don't think it matters whether it's profit initiative or growth initiatives or whatever they are. The key is being able to identify that something has occurred, it needs to be addressed, and it needs to be done very quickly and really thoughtfully to ensure that you get the result out of it. Because again, with the uncertainty that's out there, I think action is going to be very important, but we're not going to be able to sit and wait 6 months to see if something's going to go down. We really need to move quickly. And I think that's kind of the big thing that we're seeing in our business, and I think others are starting to see.
So, John, how are these companies setting out to accomplish this? You talked about acting quickly. I'm assuming being nimble as well, right? In these anomalies, and then how do you attack those? How do they, accomplish this?
Yeah, great question, Mark. I mean, it all starts with information, right? You need the information to be able to act. And if you don't have it, you can't do it. Now, the beauty of this is over the last handful of years, we've seen between ERP systems, purchasing and procurement systems, billing systems, Salesforce, et cetera, there is a tremendous amount of customer data that's been, tremendous amount of data that's been created. And whether it's customer data, getting buying trends, getting usage information, getting order history, et cetera, that's out there. Operational data, you think about uptime, you think about error rates, you think about peak loads, et cetera. There is a lot of activity that's out there. And the beauty of it is now is the time to harness that data, get that information, and be able to look at that and trend it over time. And if you're able to trend it over long periods of time, it really gives tremendous insight into the opportunities that are in front of you, whether it's increasing sales, whether it's reaching out and getting in touch with customers to identify opportunities where we could help them succeed in some of the initiatives that they have, or whether it's cutting costs. Either way, having the data on hand, at hand, and being able to use it to make business decisions is really what's going to separate the good companies from the less good companies.
So, John, you mentioned something interesting there, right? The data that's involved in capturing this. What are companies, or what are I guess you could say, what are the focuses that companies are looking at in ensuring that they have the data to use to make these decisions?
Yeah, a great question, Mark. I mean, it all starts with what's on the front end, right? And making sure about the accuracy of the information that is being used, and making sure that the data that's getting keyed in around the customer orders, et cetera, is correct, it is accurate, it's done on a timely basis. Getting that information rolling and making sure that it's right from the start is going to be able to support better decision making. I think, having that in place, I mean, that's where it all starts. And then really what we're seeing is, companies are implementing, kind of more strategic, data-driven kind of approaches to financial planning these days. They're harnessing this data. They're using this data because it's allowing them to kind of mirror the data with the business strategy that's out there, and using those two things to really come into a much more aligned budget and financial operating model that's out there. And so that's really, I mean, to me, that's kind of one of the key drivers that are out there and the key things that people are doing. Now, listen, the increased visibility into the financial performance is really, really important. And again, with the new tools that people are starting to avail themselves of, you're not having to wait to the end of months and the end of the years, et cetera, to kind of get stuff done. A lot of people are seeing this occur on a more real-time basis, which works out very well. And one of the things that we really utilize here is at Vertex, I should say, is exception reporting, creating reports that identify when key metrics, key items are not operating the way they should. And then people are getting notifications of something that's out of line, and then they have the ability to go and react and address the issue at hand. So that's really important. Again, having these things set up rather than having to go out and gather and get and understand and synthesize, having reports that are pre-populated, that are running, that are smart, and that they tell you when something is not operating are terrific, because it really allows terrific course correction while business is still happening.
Yeah, that's really curious, John. We're seeing more and more of these executive dashboards for various areas of the business. As you mentioned, that Vertex is doing for the exception information, and it relies on the data that you mentioned previously as well, that these companies are managing and improving that master data. Yep. Aside from these dashboards, what are some of the other things that Vertex maybe is doing, but you're also seeing our customers and our partners are doing to address the need for better information that feeds these executive dashboards?
Yeah, I think I'll step a little back on this one, Mark, and talk a little bit about, I think you need to first define and know what you're looking for. The amount of data that's out there is it's tremendous. It's just such a big pile that unless you're really targeted with what you're actually looking for, it's going to put you in a bad spot because you're never going to find it. So you really need to hone in on what are you looking for? And then it comes back to, how is the organization set up? Has the organization defined what its key priorities are and what its enterprise objectives are? Because knowing what that is, knowing that the organizations are focused on, I'll just say now, on growing the profitability that they've had on a year-over-year basis in certain divisions, in certain areas, and knowing what those numbers are is critically important. So it starts with organizing the enterprise around what those objectives are, then cascading some of those objectives down into the businesses so the folks in sales know what the sales targets are. They know what that is on not just a monthly basis, but on a weekly basis. And they really understand the composition of those sales and how they're going to need to occur for things to happen in a way that's going to support the organization in achieving its overall objectives of, growing sales or increasing the profitability of the business. And so having that information is really important to be able, so it's set up, and having the organization set up in a way to receive it by organizing around those objectives is critical in allowing people to behave in a manner that allows them to utilize the data that's coming through. So, the data itself needs to be structured in a way that they can receive it, and people need to be able to give it to certain other people, right? And people need to be able to deliver it to others. So there's a lot in the setup and getting things around it. While there's data activity certainly that needs to take place, and I'm sure we're going to talk about that, over some of the questions that we're going to go through, the organization itself needs to be set up to be able to receive and know what it's looking for, be able to receive the information that's out there so it can then act upon it.
No, you read my mind. It's perfect segue probably to my next question, John, right? So it sounds, as you mentioned, organization itself, organize around it, build that structure from the top down and have it precipitate into the various areas, right? You touched on that also the data itself needs to be organized for this really to be effective. So it's not just about having the master data and, like you said, a bunch of data from all over the place. Really structuring the data itself is just as important to make this work. Is that true? And what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, you're right on. You're right on. I mean, here's the nice part of it is there's so much data out there, but there's a lot of new tools that are out there that are working to synthesize, manage, massage, kind of really work the data to put it into a format that is much more easily readable, digestible, and understandable. I think in the old days, we would sit and we would wait for, get done a month and run a report out of the ERP, and it would tell us about this and about the other, et cetera, and go from there. And what we're seeing now, Mark, is that there are now reports that are running in real time, that are running regularly, through leveraging tools like Power BI and these exceptions reports that I referenced earlier. Things are coming out. You're not waiting to receive data to then start acting. You're knowing how things are going to end up because you're seeing real-time financial information, sales information, profitability information roll itself across, and it's allowing people to be able to act on it on a more regular basis. And so I think that's really important because it's really going to speed up time. It's going to then have people speed up the time to action and allow them to focus on getting the problems fixed rather than creating the reports to find out what that answer is. And so that's the nice part of it. I mean, we and others are using, I mentioned Power BI, but we're using tools like Snowflake and Azure Data Factory and some of the other tools that are out there to help us to synthesize this data. And again, we're not unlike anybody else that's out there. But I think one of the things, when you use all these tools and you gather all this data, one of the most important things that I would emphasize and stress is you really need one version of the truth, right? And I think the risk that you have is that you create a lot of data sources out there. People are getting it, pushing and pulling it around, creating their own answers to problems, but they may not have all the data. It may not be a complete set. It may not be there. And so creating rules around data governance and master data management and those types of things is really what is going to allow companies to be successful in kind of the digitization of reporting and financial decision making, because it's not going to occur in an organized format if everybody is going and grabbing information and they're not getting the complete picture. And I think that's very, very critical. And again, having that one version of the truth is what's really going to separate the really well-run companies that handle and manage data and reporting from those that don't. So I think I can't stress that enough. That's one that is very, very central to me, because I've been at organizations where that has not occurred, and things don't work out well when, again, people are self-serving, but they're not self-serving with the entire picture.
John, that was that interesting comment when you talk about making sure that the groups within organizations aren't being self-serving, but we're thinking about the enterprise and looking to other areas. So to that point, right? What are you seeing that some companies are doing to address the development of the systems that you just mentioned and organize around that so groups aren't off on their own and that data is all connected?
Yeah, it's a great one, Mark. I think, more and more as we develop and we evolve into this, I think we're seeing people move away from environments where the old days, the data and the company data was kind of controlled by a few and understood by a few. And only a few people knew how to run reports, use reports, generate things. And so we all have people like that at our company that we rely on to get, can you help me with this? Can you pull this together for me? I'd like to see this in a way. But what we're seeing now is that as the training and the tools and the ability for people to understand and process this information is out there, and you're having good governance over the data inputs that are out there, that it's become more of a self-serve environment. People can actually, we're trying to appeal to a much larger set of business users that can utilize, understand, and interact with this clean data to be able to make decisions. And so that training and that information, that knowledge sharing is really occurring. And so that's working and having a real nice impact. But again, I think there's an evolution. Companies are at different stages on how that is taking place, and taking it out of the hands of a few, putting it into the hands of many, but with a real strong kind of control around what the governing data is. And I think what we see from that is that, as mentioned earlier, we're developing analytical solutions that are being done in a very agile way. We're putting together reports that hadn't existed before, where we're marrying things that are coming out of our sales database, that are also coming out of our purchasing database, and kind of putting things together that otherwise haven't been done. And we're iterating ourselves through different change through an agile methodology. We're creating reports and we're iterating on those and continuing to develop and evolve. And I think what is resulting is a better outcome in terms of speed and time to the users with that information, and the level of accuracy in it is very, very strong. And so that's the way that we're kind of now changing the way that we're doing it. In the old days, you'd tell somebody, all right, I need a report that's got these 7 things on it, and then you'd be working back and forth. Now we're able to, again, turn that into the hands of some of the users. We're able to then, we're able to evolve and iterate on reports in real time without having to go back and having IT run a different report. And then we're moving it along. And then what I would say is, once the data is out there, getting that information passed down critically, once that information is out there, and ensuring that it's being consumed and understood by some of the business users and the operational users of it is a critical element. We utilize at our Vertex a group that we call the finance business partners, finance individuals that work in finance, that kind of are the liaison between the business and the finance operations to ensure that people are understanding the numbers, the trends, the data that's kind of going in, and that are also helping kind of iterate on many of these reports and determine what is the information that's going to help them make the decisions that they're looking to make. And so we found that that's a real critical piece. These are the people that are getting the information, sitting it in front of and helping them look around the corners, saying, this is what this seems to be telling us. And so in order for something to happen, XYZ to happen in the future, we need to be positioning ourselves by doing ABC. That to me is really critical. Again, it's one thing to have it. It's another thing to be able to use it and to make the decisions. And a lot of times, the people that are going to be making the decisions, need some level of coaching, training, and information to be able to drive those decisions. And that's what we've used these finance business partners to be able to do. They're really liaising with the business on a day-to-day basis, spending frankly, more time with the business than they are with finance. But then we're all coordinating back in the shop to make sure that we're giving them what they need to drive business change.
Yeah, John, you touched on a lot of things there. Maybe my next question really is, if you could maybe clarify, you touched on a few groups within Vertex that are involved, but could you maybe talk about some of the other areas or individuals that should be involved in these initiatives to help drive the solutions, what other teams, and then maybe very quickly flow into, should there be processes around this to see if these initiatives are working, and what are the review cycles look like? So you mentioned a few teams already, maybe touch on a few others that we should be thinking about that should be involved, and then what's the process look like for making sure this stuff is working?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, Mark, when I think about the groups that are involved, we've talked about IT and finance. I mean, again, that's kind of easy, right? That's a layup for a person like me to talk about. I think there's a lot of other people that need to be involved in the information to ensure that we're getting good reporting. Listen, it really starts at the very beginning, as I said earlier in the presentation. I mean, the data input that's going on, from order entry, from sales, from purchasing, et cetera, that information is critical, and ensuring that that's right. It's important. It's important to stress to the individuals involved in those processes how important that is, and involving them in some of the reporting that's coming out on the back end, I found to be very critical, because when they see the level of reporting that's coming out of this and they understand how important certain of those data elements are, they then take a renewed interest in ensuring that the information that they're putting together is more, is more accurate than otherwise would be, et cetera, and done on a more timely basis. Like, if you engage people in the process, we found that it's much more, it's much more fulsome in terms of what the product we get at the end of the day. And so, again, getting people involved early, then training. I mean, so again, a lot of people in those groups are involved, training people on how to use the systems, how to manage through the systems, how to work the systems. And then, I mean, again, one person with all the answers doesn't work. We need a lot of people to understand it, and sharing that. We have a lot of educational seminar that we do within the organization to train the trainer, to have people then go out and spread the word and evangelize what's going on, to make sure that word is getting out and that people know how practically to use this stuff. So that's really important. Let's see, we've talked about, we've talked a little bit about the finance business partners and what I think a key role that those people play in the organization. They are helping ensure that the information is getting out into the organization, decisions are being made, and they're holding people accountable. But we need to make sure, that's a critical element of it, is being able to really get that information out, making sure that, again, good information to start, the information is being understood, it's getting processed properly, people are managing it. And again, a lot of this is occurring within the IT organization, the management of that, that data set. They're the ones that are going to ensure that we've got that one version of the truth, that it's operating effectively. And then people that have access to it are in read-only modes and can create reports and do everything, but they're not going to corrupt the data. So I think there's a lot of different things that kind of allow for good knowledge transfer and good organizational setup that get the information into the hands of many.
Yeah, I'm sure that those groups are also involved, as you mentioned, the review cycles and the processes for these initiatives, right?
Oh yeah, everybody. Yeah, no, it doesn't spare anybody. Everybody's involved, because again, it requires everybody to ensure that things look right, they're feeling right, and they're properly. They look like they're getting done before we find out later that there's a problem in the report.
Yeah. And accountability, I'm sure, is critical, right?
Yeah. I mean, listen, accountability is absolutely critical, and it's not one person's job, because I think at the end, we've talked a little bit about some of these pieces. It really, accountability is going to go down to everyone in every group, and it starts, as we said earlier, with the enterprise objectives. What are we holding ourselves accountable as an organization for? And then when you drive that down to the organization and you peel it back, then it's like, certain groups and, North America are responsible for this type of sales. This is how much we need out of them. And again, driving that and cascading that down to the organization allows people then to really understand on a very granular level how what they're doing on a regular basis is impacting and influencing those enterprise objectives that are up there. So, I think it's, I can't stress accountability enough, because it's one thing to sort of have it in the enterprise to ensure that it's there, but we all need to know, we need to set plans up to allow us to achieve it. And having information to allow us to track to those plans is going to be what's there. Listen, when we think about accountability in some of this data activity we're talking about, listen, IT's got a lot. We talked about governance. I think that, again, and making sure that that's there. And listen, they need to practice good data hygiene, right? To make sure that the information that's there isn't getting overloaded and we're not creating this morass of mess that we otherwise don't need. These things need to be nimble, fast, and adaptable to the reporting needs that we're going to have. So they need to make sure that these things are operating correctly. And listen, there's financial accountability. We haven't, we spent a little less time talking about sort of what the finance people are doing with this. But again, the financial accountability into the departments that some of these finance business partners are supporting is critical, right? They are being held accountable to a certain P&L. They need to deliver the results. The expense number is this. This is what they need to deliver on a regular basis. And having the information at their fingertips to be able to understand where they stand with respect to those financial goals, as well as kind of understand where things are going based on the trending that we've seen, is tremendously important. So again, pushing that down, making sure that the data is there to support it, and again, having systems and controls are going to only drive the accountability throughout the organization.
No, this has been an amazing discussion, John. We've got time for one more question, and I think we want to open up for questions from the audience. So you've told an amazing story of what Vertex has gone through, but also what you're seeing in the industry, right? That master data, making sure it's clean, the tools that are used, the accountability by the organization itself from the top down, working to make sure that everybody's informed and moving towards the right goal, right? Increasing the profitability and the nimbleness of the company. So have you seen some benefits from these initiatives that Vertex themselves has rolled out? And then let's kind of wrap up with this last question.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we absolutely have seen benefits. Again, the connectedness in the organization to me is critical. I mean, on an overall basis, from a cultural aspect of things, I think it demonstrates when you start at the very top and you cascade down, you really get that. But specifically on some of the stuff that we've been talking about today, again, some of these new systems, first, that they create a tremendous amount of efficiency, right? The digitization allows us to automate a lot of things that otherwise we've been having to do on a manual basis. So again, these newer ERP systems, the purchasing systems, these systems are automating processes that in the past were much more manual intensive. And so that is very important. Obviously, it saves on cost. It allows, to me, better accuracy and then consistency among some of the reporting that's out there. Again, we've talked a little bit about data quality. Again, the accuracy and the completeness of the financial data that we're getting because of some of the systems, the granularity that's in there, the visibility into what's happening in the organization is allowing for better decision making, frankly. And so that is going to be critical for us. I mean, again, visibility is out there. Again, because this stuff is happening in real time, we're not waiting for months to end and things to close and ledgers to stop. Having real-time, actionable information is critical in driving the organization. So we've seen that. I think collaboration has really been there, because as more and more people have started to kind of facilitate discussions around the business operations because of information that they've not seen in the past, it's opening up a whole bigger discussion around how do we manage this? How are we managing that piece of the organization? And so the collaboration has been very, very good. Again, it starts with people just kind of getting their eyes open to kind of what's happening on a real-time basis. And all of a sudden, I think it's furthering a lot of conversations that frankly needed to have happened sooner, but I'm glad they're happening now. Again, the agility is there. It's allowing people to respond very quickly. This is being able to see it, understand it, and then quickly respond is really getting us to a place that where we need to be. That's important. And again, I guess I wouldn't be a true accountant if I didn't say at the end of the day, better compliance, better accuracy and timeliness with financial reporting and standards and those types of things. Again, the information that's coming out, many times in the old ERP systems was sufficient enough to handle it, but now with the level of data and the granularity that's there, I think we're getting much better financial reporting, much better information that's out from a regulatory standpoint to those that have to deal with that. So we feel really good about it.
John, this has been fantastic. I can't thank you enough for your time. And I'm sure that members of this Argyle, the CFO Leadership Forum, Future of Finance, will find your experience and insight extremely relevant for their own companies. John, as the CFO of Vertex, you touched on who Vertex was a little bit at the beginning of our talk. Could you maybe close us out with a little overview of who Vertex is? And I guess maybe as you're doing that summary, I think we're going to be getting some questions that come in via the chat, and we'll answer those after the session. So, John, why don't you close us out with just an overview of Vertex? And once again, thank you again for the time today.
Yeah, my pleasure. Yeah, look forward to the questions. Thanks very much, Mark. As it relates to Vertex, let me give you a little bit of a summary. Vertex is been around for over 40 years in tax technology, and we've really pioneered it over the time. We have over 4,600 customers. We support over 60% of the Fortune 500. And at the end of the day, we deliver comprehensive tax solutions that enable global businesses to attract, comply, and grow with confidence and avoid risk. That's what's critical. Companies that operate with very complex tax operations rely on Vertex to automate some of the end-to-end indirect tax processes that they have. And so, we're very pleased, as we develop and drive and continue to evolve our tax content database to reach out and provide support for companies that are growing and expanding across the world, that we can be at the forefront of that. So it's been a very good journey that we've played in, and over time we've developed our software, and our software has evolved to meet the needs of our customers. So today our software enables tax determination, compliance, reporting, data management, and document management with powerful pre-built integrations to core business applications used by most companies, particularly those applications that have a significant impact on global commerce. So with that, we'll go back to questions, and I look forward to getting back with answers. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark and John, for such an insightful fireside chat. I also want to thank everyone else for joining us today for this fantastic session. Now, this session, along with all of today's content, will be available on demand following the event.